Hey everyone, this podcast is part of Story Mode, the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. You can support us and gain access to other great exclusive podcasts at patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name is David Bell.
I'm Tom Ryman.
I'm Jason Pargin, a.k.a. David Wong.
And we just watched The Old Guard.
Field Guard.
It's not about just a night security guard who's just super old.
Who are you?
You can call me Andy.
I lead a group of soldiers. Fighters, like you. With an extremely rare skill set.
What do you mean? Mother?
Let's just say we're very hard to kill.
The movie we wanted it to be, thinking it was like in that tradition of Space Cowboys or Cocoon, where it's a bunch of wacky old people, and then that they have to do like one last job, and it stars like Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson and somebody else who's old. It is not that, unfortunately.
No, it's a shame.
It's not the bucket list 2.
Yeah. This is
also does not appear to be white nationalist propaganda.
Yeah.
So
it does not appear to be that. That's
so
true.
of the movies I've brought to the show, that reduces the percentage to 50% of movies that turned out. For people who did not listen to previous episodes, that's fine. Just start with this one. But this, that was not a hate group recruitment film.
Yeah.
It was just refreshing, after 2.5 hours of dragged across concrete.
Yeah, Jason, first of all, thanks for being on.
Yeah.
Also, you suggested this one to us. I mean, it's a new one. It's on Netflix.
It came out last weekend, yeah.
Right. I don't know if we would have done it otherwise, which is weird because, it's new. It's popular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Netflix is doing that thing where they have a press release saying that it was viewed by like 72 million people.
Right.
Which, people have looked into those stats. It's similar to the video stats that Facebook gave us when we were all at Cracked.
Yeah.
That is part of the reason why none of us are at Cracked anymore.
Why none of us are Cracked
where it's like, basically, if you watch the first 2 minutes because you finished watching, Frasier, and it auto-played The Old Guard, the length of time it took you to find your remote or your PlayStation controller, that counts as a view. It's like, nope, too bad, that's a viewer. So nobody knows, but it has good ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, has good audience score. I've had
a pretty high Metacritic score too. Yeah,
2 different people recommend it to me separately. But I hated this movie so much that it's like Mystery Science Theater 3000 level bad to me. And so I'm fully willing to admit I'm wrong. I am also prepared for your audience to note that I probably am being harder on this movie than the one that turned out to be white nationalist propaganda.
That you were on dragged across concrete.
That's a fair criticism.
Yeah. Tom, did you enjoy this movie?
I thought it was boring.
Yeah, okay. So I
thought it was boring, and I also thought, when they did the action scenes, some of it was kind of cool, but like the dialogue is terrible. It's just like the sweatiest exposition imaginable, to the point where in one scene 2 characters are explaining what Charlize Theron's guilt is as she stands outside the room, and then she walks into the room right when they're finished explaining her character, and the one character literally ends it by saying, and she blames herself, and then Charlize walks in the room, and the other main character, the new immortal, looks at her and says, "Why did you blame yourself?" I laughed a couple of times at how bad the dialogue was.
Yes. And there are, and I don't know, do we summarize the plot for people that have not seen it? Do we back up and kind of, do people know what the Old Guard is? Do we have to do that?
We usually summarize it at least a little bit.
Who wants to do it? Who thinks they have the best grasp Because I have some plot questions, so
All
I'm
right,
not entirely sure.
I'll attempt it. I'll attempt it.
Okay.
Forgive my terrible voice. I've been sick all day. So
You sound pretty good, Tom.
okay.
Your listener's going to ask if you have COVID. Do you have COVID symptoms?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Okay, so it's about this team of 5 people who have been alive for a long, or ostensibly immortal. They're like Deadpool, where they can take obscene amounts of damage and they just recover. Oh, they're kind of like Highlanders, actually, in that respect.
Yeah.
But their mortality will eventually wear off. So there's always this question after they get shot or something if it's going to be the last time. But they've been trying to do good in the world throughout the centuries, and they get recruited by Chiwetel Ejiofor to basically do the, what was it, Boko Haram, where they kidnapped all the school children. To do that, only it's a trap. And they basically get ambushed, and it gets recorded because Chiwetel is working for this pharmaceutical company run by Dudley Dursley.
Yep. The villain is Dudley Dursley.
Yeah, the actor who plays Dudley in the Harry Potter movies, for those of you confused. It's not. They did not bring the actual character in.
It's not the character Dudley Dursley.
They weren't that brave.
Although, man, what if it had been? That's what he grew up to do. They should make a Harry Potter where Dudley Dursley is kidnapping wizards and extracting their genetic code to try and create more wizards.
100%.
But that's what he's doing. He wants to kidnap them so that he can basically use them to cure all disease and stuff and make a boatload of money. And that's why Chiwetel was in it at first, because his wife died of like ALS. So he was like, well, these people could help cure. But then he quickly realizes that they're evil and helps the old guard escape from the lab at the end.
Just to briefly interject, the villain of the movie, who will be killed in a spectacular fashion at the end of the movie,
pretty great.
His motivation is to extract some tissue samples from the heroes so that he can cure all sickness.
Yes.
The villain wants to cure sickness.
Us, as the audience, are rooting for that to not occur.
Yeah. And they do this thing where they make him cartoonishly evil, so to justify it.
Right, to justify why we're mad at him, because he's like, well, you don't need to keep them prisoner forever. You've already got the samples. He's like, no, they're staying here forever because they're property. I can't let the competition get them.
Those evil people trying to cure disease.
Trying to cure all disease. I mean, I get it. It's a money racket. But.
Right, because the whole thing is like, I can't let them fall into the hands of my competition, so I have to imprison them permanently. But you can patent drugs you make. You can patent that molecule. That's the whole deal. It's pharmaceutical companies are not lacking for cash because they're unable to just kidnap test subjects. You can, in fact, you could just throw these people like $100 million and say, just come back like once a week and let us get new tissue samples.
Like,
and I think they'd probably do it.
So
I kept thinking that. I was like, did you try asking them?
Right, because they're trying to do good, and they seem like really against the idea too.
And one of the guys kind of rolls on them a little bit, because he's like, well, I have no purpose in my life. I've been alone forever. Maybe they can do something with this.
Yeah. And
so
they can.
You could have just asked. You would have gotten that guy. That's enough.
The weird part, they don't even stress the money making. Like, they mention it briefly. Yeah. But a couple times the villain is just like, I want to cure the disease of the world. And he says it like in a sinister way.
Right. And he's wearing sport coats that have hoodies.
Yeah.
Because he's supposed to be like this Mark Zuckerberg type nerd CEO, evil CEO or whatever.
Martin Shkreli for sure.
Yeah. So they cast Dudley Dursley and they gave him like a weird personality or whatever. But it's like, gosh, if he cured all the world diseases, we would actually forgive everything else he's depicted as doing here. It's like, well, he's got his own personal army that travels with him. It's like, I don't care.
They literally say that's most CEOs.
Yeah, I said that aloud to the television when the character asked that question. I was like, I think a lot of CEOs have private security forces.
If they had him be like, I'm only going to sell it to the super rich and we will run the... Like, he doesn't do any of that. He's like, I'm going to cure disease for the world.
Yeah,
Right.
or
That's it.
make a race of like a private army that are immortal that can do his evil bidding. He wants
Right,
to make
yeah.
a race of supervillains, which is the plot of, I think, The Boys on Amazon Prime. Anyway, we were supposed to be letting Tom summarize the plot of this movie.
That's it.
and
I did it.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
It summarized it.
that the movie does not go very far because, like, the villain winds up kidnapping, I think, 2 of the members of the team, and
About
the
halfway
rest of the
through.
team, halfway
Yeah.
through, and the rest of the team has to go rescue them from the office building where the CEO is. It's not like a fortress; it's just where his office
It's
is.
an office building in
And
London.
they successfully do it because of course they do. They're immortal. They
They're
they cannot be killed.
indestructible.
And that's the end of the movie.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the key to this movie is that Dudley is also the final boss. And this is it represents, I think, the whole problem with the movie is at no point are there stakes. It's like if Thor had to stop like a bank heist and then easily stop the bank heist and then
Right.
the movie ends.
It's
Like,
it's
because
like
they don't-
using like Thor to stop any crime. 'Cause
The
it's like he's
most-
more concerned with alien crimes.
Right. The most stakes they have is that the main character, Andy, she is mortal
She's-
again.
She stops healing. Yeah,
She stops healing, and then it's like, oh, she's like everybody else. Like that's still, and it doesn't change her. She still just does the stuff. Mm-hmm. She's still just an action star, and that's my also biggest question: is she still mortal at the end?
Because they imply she won't die of old age.
yes.
Yeah.
She just can't heal. She heals the way a person would. So, like, she gets a non-fatal gunshot wound in the belly or in the side of the
Lower
abdomen,
yeah.
which is a wound that you've seen Arnold Schwarzenegger in human form take many times. Or,
Right.
it's a type of wound that everyone in the Fast and Furious universe gets 7 or 8 times a movie. And they
you're
just
not,
keep doing
right. You're not
karate.
worried about them. You're like, oh, he's fine.
Yeah, so it's not. She achieves the level of mortality of Jason Statham in the Fast universe, which is
Right.
She's
this
been
person.
reduced to the level of a mere John Matrix.
Yeah.
That's from the movie Commando. He does not think the main character of the Matrix is named John Matrix. For those of you new to the podcast, Tom does not think that Neo was named John Matrix.
Was he not?
But what if he was?
Was he
What
not
if he
Mr.
was?
Matrix? Isn't that what
Mr.
the movie
Matrix.
was? Oh man.
I had intentionally made like a list of positives that I wanted to get out because I don't want to just
Sure.
rip on
Sure.
this movie because again, I don't want to keep circling back to the last episode that I know not everybody listened to, but we had a lot of positives for Dragged Across Concrete before establishing that it probably was white nationalist propaganda. So let's not deprive this movie. First of all, directed by a black woman, Gina Prince Bythewood. That is the first, as far as we know, first comic book movie directed by a black woman.
Correct, yeah.
Of any
and
type?
She's moving on to another big project, too. I forget. I
Good,
need to look it
because
up.
I thought the directing wasn't the problem. I thought she did a good job.
No,
my
I
beef
like
is-
that you can actually follow the action sequences. It's not that shaky
Yeah.
cam bullshit.
Right. The
My
issues,
beef is purely with the screenplay. Like the performances are fine, the directing is good.
We'll circle back.
We'll
See,
circle back.
we're getting right back into the negatives again. There's issues. It's low budget. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Has a great diverse cast.
Yeah.
Black female protagonist played by Kiki Lane, Charlize Theron playing the other lead. The group has an openly gay couple that does not immediately die just to motivate the characters. They're actually there through the movie. They actually did a thing where in the graphic novel, the immortal who winds up getting banished to the bottom of the ocean is Japanese in the graphic novel. They cast a Vietnamese actress to play her, and the actress said, let's make the character Vietnamese so that we're not just telling the audience that you can just swap in one Asian for another. And they did that.
Yeah, they
Nice.
did.
That's a type of thing where maybe a white director doesn't even occur to them that that's a thing that's problematic. So if we have complaints about it, it would be that they deserved a better script than this, and I'm not even sure that this source material. I've not read the comic. Have either of you?
No.
Are you
No.
familiar with the graphic novels at all?
No,
Also-
although I know they're written by Greg Rucka, who's a big
Who wrote the screenplay?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And also, I mean, people seem to like this movie, so I mean, good. Like it is a success. And I'm a little baffled by it personally, but you know, we're in the minority there. Like most people like it, so this movie is a success. I don't want to convince people to hate the movie, but I have a lot of things that I think are wrong with it.
Or to not see it. If you're thinking about seeing it to like avoid watching it based on our word, it's please. I think all of us here on this episode tend to dislike things that other people do like.
Yeah.
And
also,
we probably are wrong.
It's not hurting anybody. Like, compared to Dragged Across Concrete, that's a movie that I'm like, yeah, maybe don't see that.
Yeah, this movie could cause harm.
This movie is not trying to make the world worse.
Yeah, it's trying to make the world worse. The old guard's not trying to do any of that.
This definitely has that thing where it's like, well, it's not hurting anybody. It's, you know, I can't be angry at people for liking this movie.
Mm-hmm. And the action is cool when it happens. And, I mean, if you want to see Dudley Dursley get tackled out of a 30-story window and explode through a car, that was fantastic.
I also liked, what's her name, Niall, the main character? Well, she's not... That's one of my complaints. I feel like she should have been the main character.
Well, I want to talk about that because I thought she was terrible.
Really?
Like, I thought that actress was very, very bad.
Oh. I liked her.
And part of it is because... she has to play. She's playing like a very familiar character. She's like the new one, so it's like she's our way into the story. So she has to sort of be incredulous all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to pull that off without being irritating.
Sure.
And I don't think she did. And I also think, like, especially in scenes when she's acting with like Charlize or with like Chiwetel, it's just like, oh man. I got like flashbacks of like Keanu acting opposite Gary Oldman in Dracula. It's like, oh man.
Oh man. I feel like they give her much to work with.
No, like I said, almost I will say 50% of it is the dialogue she has to say is very bad.
We needed to, if you look at movies like I don't know, like Men in Black or like anything where someone has to join a secret organization, you start with that character and then they get introduced to it. This is weird because it starts with Charlize Theron and like they could have done a cold open where like they all get shot and get back up and then we cut to this other character, but instead she just like gets thrown into the plot suddenly.
Yeah,
like
that was weird.
They are the ones, they have this weird dream of her, and it should have been, we should have been with her, liked her, then she dies, has that dream of them, and then is wondering who they are, and then Charlize Theron shows up. Yeah. Like, that's how you make that. It's very weird that they did it the reverse way.
I think it's because Netflix spent a whole bunch of money on Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
And I think part of, like, this had a $70 million budget. I think maybe a lot of it went to Charlize. I don't know. That information was probably out there, but it didn't wind up on screen.
Mm-hmm. It's surprisingly, for a movie about a team of centuries-old soldiers that are in this globe-trotting adventure, it is surprisingly limited in scope. Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about that because it's. I had put in the notes. There's like a Reddit discussion about this, about the fact that a lot of made-for-Netflix stuff looks cheap and it looks like TV. I thought there were some segments of The Ballad of Buster Scruggs that looked not like a Coen Brothers movie. They all had the segments had a different look, but there were some of it that looked like TV. And they had said in that thread that Netflix has really specific like equipment you're required to shoot on because of how they want to be able to encode it to 8K and for like future expansion or whatever. And that they require like very specific digital cameras and stuff like that just have like a very flat look to them unless you really know what you're doing. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know if that's the issue. But for instance, that The Witcher TV series, I thought that in places looked so cheap that it was distracting. And that's a show that cost like $80 million to make.
Yeah, it's not a cheap show.
but it looked at times like Xena Warrior Princess, where they would be out in the woods, and the woods somehow looks like a soundstage, even though I know it's not. Like, it's clearly an exterior, but the way it's lit like makes the costumes look cheap.
Yeah.
And like here, they like go off to France to their safe house, and their safe house is just an abandoned house outside of Paris.
It's like supposed to be an old church, but then they go inside and it's just a house. Like, it's clearly just a house
There's
they
nothing
had
with
access to.
Yeah, and then later they get run out of there because it gets attacked, and they go to a lair, a 950-year-old lair that they've been using that's in an abandoned mine elsewhere in France, and it just looks like this cave set like you would see from, like, if the Big Bang Theory did an episode where they went to a cave. Like, it's just this generic, it's not lit like they're in a cave, it's just like this. And they took some props because it's supposed to be like, this is all the stuff they've collected over the last almost 1,000 years, and they just
made me laugh.
Yeah, they just literally stacked like some old looking paintings in the corner, and then
There was one painting and a statue. That was it.
And then they just like some old style weapons that just clearly, like, they clearly just gone to the prop stock room and just grabbed some stuff and just set it down. It looked like they spent 20 minutes on the set, and it's like, this is their bat cave. Yeah. They've had 1,000 years to live in the space and dress it up and booby trap it or do whatever. Like, set design is where you have a chance to convey all sorts of things about the universe, about the characters, about who they are, how they live. You know, what would a 6,000-year-old person, what do they want to surround themselves with? What would they put in their lair? And it just looks like they didn't give any thought to it. And again, very easily could be purely a budget issue. Like, again, that may have been a location they had access to. They were not able to build them a thing. I just don't know.
It looked like an episode of Briscoe County Jr. Like,
the
it
cave,
really...
where they use the same cave?
Yeah. They keep using the same cave in that show.
Oh, man. I can tell you what part of the budget went to is all those... They filmed all those places on location. Like, they went to Marrakesh. They went to Morocco. They went to...
Cool.
But it just
France.
doesn't look like it. They went there and filmed something that looks like a location in L.A.
Yeah.
That they found that they could, or Toronto, or whoever has the best tax breaks, wherever they shoot stuff now, Georgia, like wherever they go, that's the cheapest to shoot. It just looks like, because that's what most productions would do. You would dress up some church in L.A. and then put a thing at the bottom of the screen that says "outside Paris."
Or you send a second unit to film the exteriors, and you do everything else on a soundstage.
They even have a line where she's like, because she says we're going to Paris, and then she's like, this isn't Paris, and she's like, well, we're outside Paris.
We're outside Paris because we couldn't afford to film in Paris.
Yeah, that's what it really felt like.
Well, they have one exterior shot of Paris in the after credits sequence because you can see the Eiffel Tower.
Oh, right.
Unless it could be a digital effect. I have no
idea.
idea.
It could be Vancouver with the Eiffel Tower in the background.
I wouldn't recognize the Parisian skyline if it fucking stabbed me in the heart. The Eiffel Tower stabbed me in the chest. I wouldn't know it.
And again, the climax of this film is a skyscraper that they have to escape. And that's it. And they just get shot at. And they are fine because
she has a pretty bitchin' axe fight with that guy in the hallway.
Oh yeah.
That was cool. Like, if you want to see Dudley Dursley get tackled out of a window, and also if you want to see Charlize Theron go ham on people with an axe, then this is the movie for you.
Yes, they did spend some time doing real fight choreography.
Yeah, all the actors are doing it, which is cool.
Yeah, and so maybe that's where a lot of the energy went. They wanted the action, the fight scenes to look authentic or whatever. But it's rough because, like, the assault on a skyscraper to retrieve your friends, that's the climax of The Matrix. That's something we've seen 20 years ago. And this does not really compare to...
No.
Because you look at how they played with that set and then, put them in an elevator shaft and just really went crazy, taking the ideas they'd set up that these characters can defy gravity and they can do all the stuff, and then just really going nuts with it. And so they wind up on the roof, and then they have to take a helicopter and rescue them out of this. And again, could just be budget, but for example, I included a screenshot of this on our notes, but the two guys they're trying to go rescue are being strapped to gurneys so they can extract tissue samples, and they're just poking them with a needle and extracting some tissue, which immediately heals. So that's not great, but they're held down by just canvas straps that have like the little plastic clasp like your duffel bag has, where you just squeeze it on the sides and it unclips, and that's what's holding them down. And they're immortal 3,000-year-old warriors of veterans of many wars and I know that sounds like nitpicking because you're like pausing to examine the props they used, but the entire drama of the finale of this movie, the entire drama of the final 30 minutes is to rescue these two guys who could very, very easily just reach up and unclip their restraints and walk out. So it's a case where, due to budget, due to whatever, instead of creating something that looks like that's scary, that looks like something that could restrain an immortal, instead of like that conveys how sadistic the bad guy is, something that you tell the set director, like, use your imagination. How would you restrain someone who is immortal, who is going to be about to be
just real quick? This is just immediately popping into my mind. Nail them down.
Yeah.
Because like we got the image earlier of we see in flashback where what Charlize Theron's character is haunted by as her old longtime companion. They got caught and accused of being witches and were just executed over and over and over again until finally they threw her friend into an Iron Maiden and threw her into the ocean. And that's the kind of imagery you should have had. Like when she gets locked in the Iron Maiden, you can see her face. It's just like screaming through the mask as they throw it into the ocean.
And
like,
she
that's the
drowns,
kind of thing
and then comes back to life and drowns again over and over and over forever.
Yeah, that is conceptually horrible.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Yeah, that was a really good idea, and it's like, why not do that with the actual current day bad guys? Have them do something like that.
Right. I had a little bit of it. Like, obviously, the post credits as they bring her back, that character, but there's a few threads like this when they tell her that story, Niles. If I were told that story, I'd be like, okay, let's go. Like, go where? Let's go find her. We tried. I don't care. Like, I can't sit here. Like, that's one of those weird things where they're sitting there like, and so she's out there somewhere, and it's like, that's horrifying. Why isn't this the only thing you're doing?
Also,
is trying to find
they spent
that person.
decades doing it. In their defense, it would be impossible to find one coffin in the entirety of the ocean.
I know.
With modern technology, it should be much easier. And get this. You know who can fund that search?
James Cameron?
The tech CEO who needs a person to examine, say, hey, we know where one of them is, who will be so grateful that you rescued her. She will probably volunteer to let you take a tissue sample once a month and make your trillions of dollars and go down as the greatest scientist who has ever lived. You shower her with cash, put her in a nice,
literally the savior of humanity.
Yeah, the savior of humanity. Give her a nice house to live in. She'll probably this doesn't have to be a war. Between us. By the way, I think multiple ones of us, at various times, we refer to the character of Niall as Niles, which makes it sound like we're talking about Niles Crane from Frasier. Please do not visualize in the scenes we describe with Niall. Don't visualize Niles doing it.
Don't, or do. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe if you pop David Hyde Pierce in there, it'll be even more whimsical. I don't know. Just picture David Hyde Pierce tackling Dudley Dursley out of a 30-story window.
Yeah. Niall has a thread that is that she keeps talking about how she's never going to see her family again. And they're like, that's the price you pay. You can't have connections. People will grow bitter. And it feels really like the beginning of an arc, is that these people are bitter. They're saying, like, don't see your loved ones. They will, they won't understand. It's not worth it. So you'd think the arc would be her being like, no, I'm going to go do this. And she starts to and then stops. And then she just never does it.
Right. And
like
then
at the end, she's like, man, crazy how I never saw my family. And, and then that's it. And it was like, wait, what the hell is that? Complete your arc. Or was that never an arc? I
don't know. They also introduce an arc where she's like, she refuses to help Andy and Booker go into Chiwetel's house, whose name is Copley. Because she's like, I right before I died, I killed somebody, and I can't get that image out of my head. I don't want to be a killer. And then 4 minutes later, she's just fucking offing people in an office building like it's no thing. Like, I don't even understand why that exchange was in there. It was just a reason to have her not go into the house with them, because that's where they get kidnapped.
It's a lot of that. Again, with Charlize Theron becoming immortal, they never really explain it. She just starts bleeding. She goes to fix it up, and they're like, oh, no, she's mortal again. And then at the end, they banish that guy, and she's like, I'll see you in 100 years. And it's like, wait, you're like, what does that mean?
I also
so you're not going to get super old? Like,
I guess not. But
how does she know that?
I guess she doesn't.
Yeah.
Because she does say, I'm going to miss you. So I feel like she herself is not certain whether or not she's going to age, because I don't think they know.
She does say, I'll meet you here in 100 years. And then they just sort of walk off.
I thought she said they'll meet you here in 100 years.
I don't know. Maybe I misheard.
I thought that punishment was strange, because his whole justification for kind of sort of rolling on the group was like, it's like he's like talking to the two other guys it's the gay couple. He's like, listen, you guys, like, they killed each other in the crusade. So it's like, he's like, look, you guys have always had each other. I've gone through this without anyone for centuries. I've just been by myself. So he's like, I wanted to do this to, like, one, see if there's a way I can die, and two, maybe have it mean something. So it's like the whole reason he turned on the group, and he didn't even really turn on them. It was like a very minor betrayal. Like the whole reason was because he's been alone for so long. So to punish him, they're going to make him be alone for even longer before letting him back into the group. It's like, he's not going to heal.
They're not villains, but like, if you look at the roles, like this guy who just wants to solve disease, and they're like, no way. And like, they don't have any problem disposing of him. You know what they remind me of? They're a group of Jason Voorheeses. Like, they're horror movie villains.
Kind of.
They are. Like, they don't die, but they get torn apart in this gory way. They're Jason Voorhees, all of them. And they don't have any problem with, like, when they go to, like, when that skyscraper happens, they literally say something like, oh, are we going to do this like we did in, like, 1778? No, we're going to do it like this other time. All right, let's do it. And it's like, you guys aren't sweating. Like, it's the climax of the film, and you're like, how do we handle this one? Let's do it like this other time. And they just roll over these people who just want to solve disease.
That part made me laugh. For a reason that's not the movie's fault. Because part of apparently what they did in 1830 or whatever it was is one of them, Tarzan swings on a rope through a pane of glass into the office building. Which, sure, okay, I have trouble picturing that happening in 1830, but okay. But the reason why I laughed is all I could think of was the Crab People episode of South Park.
Right.
When Mr. Slave tries to swing in to shoot the Queer Eye guys, and he just, the act of swinging through the glass just fucking devastates him.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't just do that.
That's all I could think of.
That actually is the whole thing. Because, okay, I have to back up. I have a pet peeve with movies that is, no one else has this problem but me. I realize this is probably related to my own brain problems and my own, like, ego as a writer of stuff that's in the vicinity of this genre, where it's like, well, that's not how I would have written it, as someone who is a fraction as successful as anyone involved in this project.
Sure.
It is when you have a character and they have a really fascinating backstory. It's like their backstory is so alien and so outside the realm of what you would think of as human experience. And then when they open their mouth to talk, they just sound like any other 21st century movie character. Mm-hmm. An example that your listeners have probably all seen is Finn from the new Star Wars trilogy. This is a guy whose background is he was abducted as a child and raised.
That's right. He's a child soldier
and raised in a death cult. That is the Stormtroopers, which used to be clones, to give you an idea of how they're treated. Like they used to not be human, basically, and is in this cult that worships Darth Vader as a holy figure or whatever, the New Order, however they do it. Probably has never had a friendship, a normal friendship, has never had a romantic relationship, has probably never prepared a meal for himself, has never had to dress himself. He's been issued clothes. This person would have no concept of how to relate to other humans, would have no idea how to have fun, would have no hobbies. I mean, you think about it, it's a stormtrooper. And then he breaks free from the stormtroopers, and the second he steals a TIE fighter with Poe, he is just standard wisecracking Disney action character. Yeah. The same quips, the same sarcasm, same pumping his fist when they're blowing up the stormtroopers to escape. And it's like, those are your friends. Those are your childhood friends you're blowing up, but it doesn't matter. In that moment, he could just be a rebel pilot. He could be anybody. His background as a child soldier brainwashed into a death cult never comes up for 1 millisecond. It does not inform anything about his personality, how he lives, how he relates to people at all. He's just a good-natured guy.
If you think about it, it's like 95%. This is just I'm gonna use this to bridge into another thing, but it's like 95% possible that he's never even seen somebody do a fist pump. So why would he know how to do that?
All of his mannerisms, all of that would be alien to him.
Yeah, so when you have characters who are like Charlize Theron is supposed to, what's her, Andromeda, is that her name? They
just call her Andy, I think.
Yeah, she's like this. She's this character of myth. Like there are myths written about her. She's been alive for so long. Think about how out of touch you are. All of us are I mean, Jason's already there, but we're approaching 40. Think of how out of touch you are with regular pop culture. What teens are watching.
Oh yeah.
So think of how out of date she must be with whatever the fuck humans are doing in the 21st century.
Or she's really keeping up with it.
I don't know. It's hard enough for me, a mortal man, to keep up with it.
I talked to a teenager recently, a couple years ago. I don't talk to teenagers that often, and when I did, it frightened and confused me. It literally, they said something, and I was like, I don't know what you're saying, man. I don't know what you're going on about.
So her pop culture references would be from the 13th century, or
I mean, I assume she tries to keep up with it, but
okay, let's put it this way, because this is everything. Apparently, according to reading the Wikipedia or whatever, she's 6,000 years old. In the movie, she says she doesn't remember how old she is, but she refers to things that happened 1,000 years ago like they were yesterday. Mm-hmm. So to her, the concept of democracy would be like the concept of TikTok to us.
Right.
What happens because she does not have a superhuman brain. She has a normal human brain. So the people who come into her life and live for 75 years and then die, or you see her people die in battle at age 30, they just be popping in and out of existence. Now, you have listeners who are going to say, guys, that's what Dr. Manhattan is. That's why Dr. Manhattan exists in the Watchmen comics, is because it's an examination of what would Superman really be like. And the answer is he would be incomprehensible. Because to him, everything that's happening is so irrelevant. Life is so fragile. Your limited lives are so meaningless that he would try to relate. He's not a bad person, but it's like trying to relate to an anthill in your yard. It's like these people are just coming and going so fast. You just couldn't get that attached, because if there's someone you've been friends with for 2,000 years, and then you're friends with somebody else like this new character for 3 days, what would this new friendship mean to you when you have known this other person long enough to see empires rise and fall?
Yeah.
To see the same trends, the same broad trends come and go again and again and again, so that everything is just old, nothing is new under the sun. You would just be so detached from the world. But every character in this group, if they had just achieved immortality like the previous month, they would sound and act exactly the same.
Yeah, there's a
lot of
this kind of thinking about this particular this is like I wrote a book that I've been trying to get published for a while, but that's like the point of the book that I wrote is it's a character that's like, you know, been alive since the beginning of time, and like it's all of those things that Jason just said. So like I have that same thing when I watch these movies. I'm like, you're not really thinking about what this would really be like for a person that's been alive for thousands of years. They would just be completely aloof. Like it's
like when Spock mourns the death of Kirk.
Right.
It's like he's mourning a dog. Like in terms of years. Like it's the equivalent of a dog. Or like when Thor has a romantic thing with Natalie Portman. That's like she's like a hamster.
Well, Thor's
compared to your life.
With that relationship, yes, but like Thor and Spock are a little bit different because they come from
lives. Yeah.
Well, Spock lives for I think 600 years.
Yeah, it's not that long.
Thor lives for however long he lives, but they both come from societies and worlds where everybody else is like them.
Right.
So they understand what it's like to be part of a society. It's very different when you take someone who is just a human, right? But they're alive since the beginning of time, so they can't relate to anybody or anything.
Right, and they're losing their mind.
You would be insane at the end of that time.
That's a fascinating idea, because when you're dealing with immortal characters, you think of things like Interview with a Vampire, or the only other example I could think of was Zardoz with the gods.
Sure,
but like they get bored. There's weird things about them. That's what makes them interesting. And in this, they're just regular people who are faced with a very easy challenge for immortal people.
Right.
And then they overcome that challenge.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends, and it was like, okay.
There's Jason mentioned The Boys earlier, and I don't know if you've seen The Boys, Dave.
I have not.
You have to watch it.
Well, there's a character called Homelander in The Boys. At least one of these people would be like Homelander, where he's just a maniac,
right?
Like,
well, yeah, or you would have. You can just sit down and dream up all of the mythology. Like you could even say, well, yeah, everybody actually goes crazy for like 200 years and becomes like a serial killer, but then that you get over that. Like that's just a phase we all.
You've been alive for long enough to grow out of it.
Yeah, to grow out of it, or you'll try to take over the world at some point, and then you'll realize there's no point, or you'll try to become like king of the earth, but you'll find out that it's not. It's exhausting. Like something, just you throw in little hints about what life is like. I feel like a lot of vampire lore actually does this fairly well. Like Anne Rice's novels, that's a big part of what they're about. Yeah. Is it like the fact that vampires are all like perverts and they all have like weird sexual tastes and stuff? It's like, well, of course you would. You know, old married couples get tired of each other. You've been having sex for like 5,000 years. Think of how freaky you're going to get when you're trying to find new things to get you excited.
I can only get off if we're free falling out of an airplane.
Yeah.
Like, at that point.
Like one of the few bits of characterization they give Shirley Theron is she's like loves baklava and is like a connoisseur. And it's like, really? But what kind of food would she be into? Would she miss like the cured meat or whatever the hell she was eating in 3000 BC, you know, because a lot of things, the stuff you eat as a child, that kind of sets your taste. Would she, if she tried to drink like a diet soda, would she like go into convulsions because of like, what in the hell is in this?
What are humans eating
these days? Yeah, because all that stuff would be so, like the concept of fast food, that would be brand spanking new. It would be like I am to Snapchat or something. I was like, this is weird. How do you order it? How did they cook this so fast?
It's only existed since like the 1950s, right? That's like a blip for her.
For somebody 6,000 years old? And you're trying to...
It's entirely possible she hasn't heard of McDonald's yet.
But they don't. But that's not in the movie, because it's like, she uses modern weaponry and she drives a car and she just looks like a normal modern person. And that's very... I don't feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but there's so much you can do and so much imagination you can, because that's the entire thing that's interesting about the story. Because the fact that the characters have a healing factor like Wolverine by itself is not interesting. Vampires have that plus tons of layers of lore, and they have to suck blood to stay alive, on top of that. So if that's all you've got to use, that's your starting line. And then from there you start thinking, okay, what would their religious views be like? How would they view like loyalty to nations, knowing that to them countries just come and go? Like, would they just not see any as being particularly special? Would they be amazed at how like non-violent modern societies are? Because when these people were kids, you could get beheaded for like stealing a goat. Would they just have like this kind of, the way like old people are really racist because they can't quite shake it. Right. So these people are from an era when the concept of not being racist was just ridiculous. So it's like, how have they adjusted?
They'd have layers upon layers of racism.
Right, because they're so old, they come from literal tribes. Most of them. I think Booker is only, like, he fought under Napoleon, so he's only a few hundred years old.
But that would be a huge gap. Like, when them trying to relate to each other, he and Charlize Theron's character are from different universes. Like, their background is completely different. So, yeah, you're right. The concept of, I keep talking about how they would feel about nations. The concept of nations did not exist that long. Back then, like you said, it would literally have just been tribes, like tribes, various tribes in the landmass that now we will look back and call, well, that was ancient Mesopotamia or whatever. That's not what they called it at the time. You only knew your tribe. So now she's having to live in a global society, and she's freaking using cell phones and smartphones and the internet. And it's like, let's hear something from her. Like, how does she process all this? What does she do with 6,000 years worth of memories?
When they show her in flashbacks, she doesn't seem any different in those eras as well.
Yeah.
It's just her.
It's
Charlize Theron.
Shirley's wearing
like
a hat.
with exactly. With just like some older shit on her. It is really fascinating because it's kind of, this is the key to like what makes most movies charismatic, is like you take a character like Thor, we keep coming back to Thor, but like those movies succeed because they would be like, well, let's put him in situations where he's a fish out of water. Like, let's have fun with it. You have a character that's 6,000 years old, have some fun with it, and they don't have any fun with it.
Wonder Woman does it better than this, and that's just a DC movie. But the way like she sees London for the first time, and it's like trashy era of London,
like, it's hideous,
and you see it through her eyes, and then they have to let her go try on clothes. And those are some of the best scenes of the movie. It's better than the fight scenes.
It's a real shame because they don't have the worst premise here, but they don't, when they got to the end.
It's a fine premise. It's just they don't really explore it in any way that's interesting.
And there's no stakes. When they get to the end and Dudley is confronting them, the boss of the movie, Dudley confronts them with a gun, and he's confronting two people, and one of the people is impervious to bullets. And this is supposed to be like, oh, how are they going to get out of it? And it's like, I know how they're going to get out of it. He's going to die because he's Dudley. Like
he's
both
just Dudley.
Yeah, they're both one's like a soldier and the other's been 6,000 years old and knows how to fight with an axe.
Right,
and he's a pharmaceutical CEO.
Is a 26-year-old CEO wearing sneakers and a hoodie.
Yeah,
who has presumably never fired a gun before.
Yeah,
like if it was the three of us against Dudley Dursley with a gun, I wouldn't feel that threatened.
Yeah, same here.
And we're not immortal, but I was like, he's not going to know how to use that. It's hard to shoot somebody with a gun. It's actually, unless you're right next to them, it's actually hard. Like, right. I would be like, he's going to miss, and then he's going to drop the gun, and then we'll just go tackle him, because he's just a CEO. He's not immortal. He is not. The thing that you would expect to happen is he has developed his immortality serum and has injected himself with it. And becomes Super Dursley. And,
no, none of that.
And so now it's immortal Super Dursley versus mortal Charlize Theron. Aha! See, the tables have turned, and she only knows how to fight as an immortal. And I'm doing that obnoxious thing where I act like I can punch up this movie script. But that, I don't know, because I can't emphasize enough how silly that final scene is, because he's like pointing the gun, and it's like this tense thing where the two of them have to come up with a plan to overcome this. And so they have like a signal, and they trick him, and then she tackles him out of the window. It's like, why not just walk over and take the gun away from him like you would take a squirt gun from a toddler?
Yeah. He doesn't. I don't feel sympathy for the character, but he doesn't need to even die, let alone be pulverized. Like, they kill him like he's an ogre. Yeah, like, it's like you don't really need to do that much to kill him.
He pops like a meat balloon. It's great.
Hey, you could just twist his head off. But that's. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that ending also reminded me of like the part where they're on the plane and Charlize Theron is like, oh, we could jump out this plane right now and we'd be fine. And it's like, oh, there's no stakes. And then later they put two of the characters are kidnapped and they get on a plane. And I'm thinking, like, yeah, just crash the plane.
Yeah, just jump out.
You can literally just do anything in any of these situations and you'll be fine.
Go up to the cockpit and just steer the plane into the ground or something. Because you're immortal, none of these jackasses are. Or just get up there and tell them you're going to do that and say, look, this is over. You actually cannot harm us.
Yeah.
I mean, they actually, when they open, they drive the two guys to put them on the plane. Like, when they open the van, they have killed everyone in the van.
Yeah.
So
they're just like,
so you're going to put them on a plane so they can do the same thing?
It feels like they're going along with it. Like, it feels like they're playing along for fun. And at any point, they could just escape or kill everybody.
If the listeners are wondering, well, how did they get kidnapped in the first place by a bunch of mortal people with machine guns? It happens off screen.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, they used gas. It's like, oh, is that... So you're actually vulnerable to gas then. Okay. So why aren't they using that in the finale?
Yeah.
It just
they use it one time. Like when they're about to come in.
It apparently works great.
Yeah. Yeah, like the mini boss shoots a gas grenade in there, and it scatters them. But they don't use gas ever again.
They never. What? Sorry, go on.
Well, it's just you mentioned the opening scene earlier, because it starts like this in media res thing with them all getting shot, having been shot up, the immortals on the floor, and then it cuts back to start the movie to show how they got shot. And they do, as you mentioned, they fall into a trap. And the trap is that like 30 gunmen come out with assault rifles and just shoot the heroes hundreds and hundreds of times, including multiple times in the head, just shattering their skulls. And then they lay there for like 30 seconds and heal and stand up again. So that happens about 10 minutes into the movie. That's the most damage they're ever going to take in this movie. Like the bad guys at the end, again, the enemy they're facing when they enter that skyscraper, it's just guys with masks with machine guns. And none of them managed to shoot the heroes any more than what they got shot in the opening scene. So the most danger they face in the entire movie occurs 10 minutes in, and then it's pretty much smooth sailing after that. It's like the difficulty curve on video games now, where it's like hard at the beginning, and then once you actually get your weapons and stuff, then it's like somehow gets easier from there on out. It's like that.
Right.
Yeah.
They really have to do a lot of work trying to... Like, they make one of them betray them in order for something to happen. And also, did he say to Charlize that he did it so she could die?
Well,
he
said that's what we've been looking for, right? That's what you wanted.
To die?
Yeah.
but then when she's mortal, she acts like it's a real problem. And so, like, if she
doesn't really. Like, she doesn't treat it any differently. She's like, look, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. Let's just do this.
Right. Yeah. It just, I didn't get if the movie wanted me to be afraid for her or not. If she's 6,000 years old and just begging for death, or is she like, oh no, I'm mortal now? Like, they don't really. It felt very foggy. A lot of that stuff. A lot of the characters, what they wanted, seemed to kind of fluctuate in weird ways. And it felt like they were really struggling with this premise. And yeah, maybe it was budget related, that they just didn't get to do enough with this.
But for example,
go ahead.
Our main character, Niles Crane, what does she want? Like, she just gets roped into this.
It changes on a scene by scene basis.
Yeah.
She wants to see her family, and then doesn't.
She doesn't want to be a murderer, and then becomes a murderer. Like, it's
super murderer. A super
her wants
murderer.
change depending on what the movie needs her to do.
And then the way that Andy, Charlize Theron's character, gets betrayed at the end by the cipher of the group, the guy who has to betray them to, is he gives her an unloaded pistol before they go in to do their thing, and then because she has an unloaded gun, then of course that means she loses the fight.
Right.
This is a 6,000-year-old warrior who did not check to see if a round was chambered in her gun or if it had bullets in it before going into the battle. I feel like that's probably a habit. My complaint, I'm not complaining about, again, that sounds like nitpicking. My point is, to thwart a 6,000-year-old combat genius, the plan should be really elaborate.
Right.
Cool.
It's not just handing her an unloaded gun.
Yeah, what
like
he does to bring her down should be really something.
He doesn't know she's mortal there, too.
Yeah, so she could just grab someone else's gun that works.
Yeah.
She could just walk up to the gunman and take one of theirs.
Again, it needs to be Jason Voorhees level. Like, they need to chop them up and spread their parts, or like explode them. And I wanted to see how the movie would deal with such a thing. They do a grenade hit, and then the guy just sort of takes a while to heal.
He's just sitting. Sitting in a chair. Yeah,
like 5 minutes to heal.
Yeah, but like, has no one tried to just chop these people up, put their pieces in boxes?
I kept thinking of that. I was like, have they never been decapitated before?
In all of the empires and armies that have tried to bring them down, that realized what they were, none of them thought. Because, again, one of them, they wound up chucking one of them into the ocean because they didn't know what else to do.
Right.
But even like the Deadpool sequel played with the idea of, well, what happens if Deadpool gets cut in half? It's like, well, I bet he has to grow like little baby legs back. And explore the idea.
That was interesting because I thought about Deadpool earlier because the climax of Deadpool 2, makes it that his immortality is not helpful because he's trying to convince a kid not to kill somebody. Right. And that's kind of what you need to do when your characters are indestructible, is you need to think of a way that's not just like...
You give them a moral problem.
Right. It's not just them mowing through tons of bad guys because it's like, well, they can't die. So what is...
Yeah. They gotta break Michael Shannon's neck.
Right.
To stop him from killing a couple people after leveling a city.
After destroying after 9/11ing an entire city.
Yeah. He's like, don't kill these two people. It's like, you've killed thousands. But there needs to be some sort of moral issue. And instead, it reminds me, there's an Onion article, man with dream to open liquor store achieves dream. Like, it reminds me of that, where it's just like, we have this very low-level goal, and then we do it. And then the movie ends, and it's like, okay, good job, I guess.
Yeah, well, we did it.
You did the very easy thing.
Yeah. We accomplished this very easily.
Like, there are movies where mortal people do more than what they do. Like John McClane. Yeah, John Wick. John McClane surfs on a fucking fighter jet by the fourth movie. He's more immortal than they are, or he acts more immortal. It's so low level.
It's also like John McClane, not clear what their powers are, because again, in the first Die Hard movie, John McClane is just literally just a cop. He has normal
no
cop
powers in that
abilities.
first movie,
He's not a super cop. He's just a average or below average cop. He's not, and then obviously as the series goes on, he's jumping out of planes and fighting people on the wing of airliners, things like that.
Yeah.
This movie, so they've got the fight choreography, and it's, Charlize Theron can do the fighting that you see in movies now, where it's very acrobatic and all that.
She can do
and
the John Wick stuff.
Yeah, the John Wick stuff. And then the reasoning they give here is that, well, she's been around so long, she's forgotten more about combat than any army now remembers, any general remembers. Like, she knows more. It would sound like if you've been in that many battles, thousands and thousands and thousands of battles, it would almost be like a form of telepathy, because what could someone do that would surprise you?
Yeah.
Right, you've literally seen everything.
So you would think that, okay, that's the premise, is that we've got the first layer is she's got healing factor, but the second layer for power is pure experience. But that should apply to the whole team. The rest of her team are just kind of just dudes. Just dudes. They just, like, they're when they're in a pitched battle with guns, they kind of just act like you and I would with guns. Like, you're just doing it the way you've seen it in movies. They're not doing, like, again, and if the people who made the movie were here, they could say, look, we did not have the kind of budget where we could have these people doing wire fu and all sorts of, where they can move super fast or anything like that. But it's like, yeah, but okay, but give me that one line of dialogue you mentioned that I had actually forgotten. Where they're like, let's do this, like Berlin, 1865. The city of Berlin, I don't think existed back then. But anyway, whatever they said, and then it's like, yeah, that's really cool. These people have been fighting together for so long. They would have like this shorthand. And then when you see it, it is just a guy swinging through a window. Yeah. It's like, oh, it didn't work then either.
They could have pulled off the opposite, I think, which is that they could have, like, I think of like Jessica Jones as a character where, like, they're immortal, so they don't have to learn how to fight. Like, I would have enjoyed someone who just doesn't know how to fight,
or
but
they're
it doesn't
so
really
bored
matter.
by it.
Yeah,
that it becomes compelling. Where you've got like 13 SWAT guys with machine guns, which happens, and like in the movie, they're arming up and they're getting their guns ready, and it's like, we got to go in there. And I'm imagining instead, and it still hurts when they get shot, so put on some body armor. I don't care. There's some laying on the floor, and put on one of the body armor, and you just walk up and just take one of their guns away. Yeah. And just casually stride up and just do it, because you've walked through gunfire so many times. You can glance at these four guys and know that they're not going to hit you by the angle of their barrels. So it's just like, and so then now that they've seen you do that, then you up the stakes, because you didn't know that the bad guys have whatever, Mecha Dursley, whatever waiting on top floor.
He comes out in a fucking robot suit.
Suit with Dudley Dursley in it that suddenly humbles these people. It's like, oh, you've been so bored by combat, you're used to walking through musket balls, and for the first time you're having to fight somebody that can actually take you apart. And this is hard for you to deal with, because you've built up a little bit of arrogance about the fact that you can just stride across a World War I battlefield of trenches and just basically brush that stuff off like it's mosquitoes. Now you've got,
There's a Takashi Miike made a movie called Blade of the Immortal that's also based on a comic. And that deals with that. Like, the main character is a guy who can't die. He just regenerates over and over again, but he's become a very sloppy fighter because of it. And so when he's actually faced with like good fighters, he just gets his ass kicked.
Right. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Again, Jason Voorhees. He doesn't have to learn karate.
No, he just fucking hacks people to death with a machete.
Yeah. He's just like, look, all I have to do is get close enough to you to hack you with this machete. You can do whatever to me while I'm walking up to you. I'm not even going to run.
Yeah, go buck wild.
Like, it doesn't matter.
I'm going to take my time.
Have a great time. In between those two moments where I'm of close proximity to you. It's just, there's so much they could have done with this premise.
Right, like they could have, like, even, it's such an obvious gag to do, but I would have gotten a laugh out of me if, like, you saw one of the characters, like, just completely suiting up in full body armor, and then some, like, you have Niall be like, well, I thought you couldn't die. And he's like, well, I can't, but it still fucking hurts to get shot.
Right.
Like, I don't want to get shot.
And part where Charlie's like rejects a body armor. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it still helps, right?
Yeah.
Because they get incapacitated for a few minutes by...
Yeah, they actually, quote-unquote, die for a short time.
It's awful. They hate it. So it's like, well, you're still going to want to grab a helmet or something so you don't get... Because in the time you get shot in the head, they could put you in a box and throw you in the ocean. You don't want that to happen. So, yeah, you show us, the audience, that you still fear this situation a little bit. It's like, well, yeah, we're immortal, but here's the thing. If they've got, like, grenade launchers and they blow our bodies apart, that's 2 weeks to heal from that. And then what happens in that 2 weeks? They've just got my damn severed head. They're going to do God knows what with it. So, yeah, I'm actually terrified. I'm more scared than you because you will just die. My severed head may wind up in a block of concrete for the next 5,000 years. Like, what they could do to me if they're able to actually disassemble my body is terrifying. So, yeah, I'm not Superman. You know, when I get shot, it does the same damage to my tissue. I feel a freaking shrapnel going through my lungs. It's just that it heals, but even the healing probably hurts quite a bit because you got
They do that. Oh, sorry.
Well, it's got to make like the hunks of metal fall out of your body. They even show that. Like your brain has to push the bullet out of your brain. Like that can't feel good.
They do that where they set up the woman getting thrown in the ocean. And I naturally assumed they were going to face a similar threat.
Yeah.
Like Dudley was going to put them in a coffin or something. And they really are just like, no, you're going to have to be in this lab for like maybe a decade. And even he says, he's like, that's nothing for them. And I was just like, yeah, he's right. Like, they're going to live forever. What's a decade in a lab? Or if he asks nicely, they just show up once a week and, gives tissue samples. But they never threaten them with, like, purgatory, with, like, this eternal hell. Because it is, like, the one thing they would fear. And they do fear, but then it never comes up again.
Yeah, or when they kidnap the two guys, immediately chop their heads off and just kidnap their heads and say, look, we know you're going to regrow a new body over the next week. We're just going to cut it off again. And we'll just take tissue cells for, like make it, and again, it could be a budget thing, a special effects thing. I get you're talking about David Cronenberg type makeup effects here. I also get that this probably did not happen in the source material. And we're talking about, but since when is, maybe this is the problem with having the comic writer write the script, because they're too precious about the fact that a lot of the appeal of the graphic novels probably that the art style was really cool. But when translating it to just, a fairly low budget movie, it's maybe not the same.
Yeah. Yeah, the characters, I mean, I think you mentioned costume design earlier, but that might have been about The Witcher. It just kind of looks flat. Like, I wish they looked more like, I don't know. I don't necessarily want them to be running around wearing like 2,000-year-old armor, but like, I don't know, maybe some flair? I don't know. They're just walking around wearing shirts and leather jackets all the time.
When I looked this up, it was defined as a, like on the Wikipedia, is like the Old Guard is a 2020 superhero movie. And I was like, wait, really? Like it hadn't occurred to me that it was a superhero movie until, and I know maybe that's on me, but it didn't feel superhero-y.
There's no supervillain. They don't really, like, their superpowers are just a fifth of what a vampire can do because they can't fly like vampires can. They can't turn themselves into bats.
Yeah.
They're like the world's worst vampires.
Yeah.
It's like a sci-fi action. That's pretty much it. I know, again, source material, but like, honestly, if Cronenberg did this film, that would be fantastic. Like I think we needed like an R-rated version or something weird.
It has
this wasn't R-rated?
It's,
I don't know.
I think it was. It has gore in it. Like when her neck gets sliced open, it's pretty gross. When the guy's gut gets blown up by a grenade, it's very graphic. Like they were willing to go there, but it's like, man, this is body horror. You have somebody who's been drowning for 500 years under the ocean. That's you've established that you're willing to go to a really dark place, but you've primed the audience for that. But it kind of doesn't go there again.
Have fun with it. Have a hand crawling on the ground like Evil Dead style. Mm-hmm. Like have weird things happen with their bodies because their bodies are extremely unnatural but still human bodies.
Yeah, I think it's like this again. I'm bringing up Deadpool. Like Deadpool does that stuff, and I think maybe this movie was scared to do it because it's serious.
Maybe, but
but like you could do it doesn't have to be funny to do that stuff. Like you can do serious, gritty horror action style versions of that kind of stuff where it's like, yeah, I'm chopped in half, but I can still move my legs.
like if the audience laughs at them, at least the audience is having fun. Like I laugh at weird gore or like things that take itself too seriously because that's part of the fun. But I didn't feel anything watching this, and that's the problem. Like, I would have, even if I was laughing at the movie, that would have been something. Mm-hmm. But it was just people shooting each other. Well, and then getting back up.
That brings up an overarching point that I wanted to bring up, because I feel like I frequently see movies where guns are a creative crutch. Because here, the staging of these action scenes, people shooting each other with guns in a hallway is just so boring. And again, because they established in the very first scene that the guns might as well be squirt guns in terms of in terms of how they affect the plot and the characters. They have no impact on the characters. These characters are in no danger. But they just keep having scene after scene after scene of here's a bunch of guys with guns and Charlize Theron looking cool, using some bladed weapon to effortlessly cut them down. It's like, yeah, we know she can do that. We saw it. We saw that in the opening scene of the movie. So then now, how do you raise the stakes of that? And this is something that has bugged me about. I feel like Chris Nolan's movies fall into this, where like with Inception, the trailers had him, like bending the city skyline in on itself, and it's like, oh hell, the finale of this movie, they're just going to be ripping apart reality in ways that is just you can't even keep up with. And it's like, no, they just imagine gunfights, just one car chase and gun battle after another. Only this gunfight is in the snow. It's like, man, my dreams are weirder than that, and I have some pretty boring dreams. But you tease me in the trailer the stuff that they actually did do in the Doctor Strange movie, where you're bending reality and there's portals everywhere, and you're curling the world in on itself, and you're creating the time loop.
That Act 2 chase scene in Doctor Strange is amazing.
Yeah. And Inception teases that, but it's like the limit of his imagination just goes to very handsome people. At least one of them has Chris Nolan's haircut, shooting at each
other. It's like a stipulation with him. Somebody has to have my haircut.
And looking really cool while shooting each other with guns. And then I see the trailer for Tenet. It's like, we can isolate individual objects and make them travel backward through time. To show you this, imagine if you could suck the bullets into your gun. It's like, that's the least interesting thing I can think to do with time manipulation powers. But that is such a language of cinema where if there's conflict, it has to be these people with guns versus these people with guns. That even in a movie like this, where guns should not have appeared in this story after that first scene when it was established that they're useless. They should have come up with some weapon that actually works against the immortals or something, and raised the stakes on that, because it's like, hey, I know you're used to watching movies with guns, but in 10 minutes in, we've just shown guns don't work in this universe. So great, now we're off to the races. Show us what's really possible here. And it's like, no, it's just guns right up till the very final scene.
Yeah. It reminds me of like in Blade, where they're vampires. They can't be killed with bullets. So we're going to use light bullets. And it's like UAV bullets. And it's like, no, it's still got to have guns.
Yeah, it's real dumb.
Yeah. It really is. Like this movie, more than others, like the guns are so boring. Like the part, where it's like, oh, he didn't give her bullets in her gun. And like she doesn't have other ammo on her, and it's just like everything is guns, gun this, gun that. Everybody has guns, and like it's real boring.
After all, how would the 6,000-year-old warrior know how to fight without a gun?
Right. Like,
but even in Star Wars, they actually include a line of dialogue where the Jedi don't like guns to establish why they're not using ranged weapons. And it's like it's a cultural thing, because obviously the excuse is to use the much more visually cool and interesting lightsabers. And, it's just so much. Everyone remembers a lightsaber. Nobody remembers a laser pistol, because those are everywhere. But a lightsaber is like a unique thing. And so they just have a line of dialogue where he's like, lightsabers like from a more cultured time. Like they considered, blasters to be like uncivilized or whatever. Right. It's like, that's all you need. It's he just threw that in there because, in the Matrix, they do the thing has
cultural basis, right? Because like that's when crossbows first became a thing. Like they were viewed as like an ugly coward's weapon because it didn't take any skill to use it.
Right, you're not getting up close and personal with your enemy. Same as like drone warfare now. It's like nobody's making a movie about drone warfare because what's cool about that? So it's like, no, you got to be up close. You got to be able to look in their eyes. And so it could be like that. It could be part of their culture that they think guns are stupid toys, and they've learned how to evade them so well, or whatever that they're irrelevant. And I don't know.
It's a real shame.
Yeah, I feel, man. Yeah, it's. Anytime I watch, like John Wick is really cool.
Well, because they do something different with it.
Yeah, and it's
this movie. They introduced that battle axe, and then it barely shows up.
Right, then she barely uses it
movie.
again. Like what I was going to say is, it's like when I compare. John Wick's a bad example because I think those are very well made movies that managed to make guns exciting again.
He murders a giant with a book.
With a book, yeah. And he's like on horses and shit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So never mind. Well, I'm gonna compare this movie to like the Indonesian action movies, like The Raid or like The Night Comes for Us, where there's almost no guns at all in those movies.
Right.
It's just dudes wailing on each other.
And you can do I've seen interesting gunfights in movies, but they have to be like, as we keep making movies, it has to be more and more. They have to figure out ways to make it interesting. It can't just be people in a hallway shooting at each other.
Exactly, yeah.
Like that was the biggest problem with Inception, is the gunfights in Inception. It's not only that they're not bending the world, but it's like you don't even know the geography that well in those scenes, and like there's nothing about them that's interesting.
When you're cutting between
same with this
boring ass gunfights and Joseph Gordon-Levitt fist fighting a guy in a rotating hallway, it's like, do more of the hallway. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, or it's like a dream you really have where you pull out your gun and it like melts in your hand,
right?
Or you find out it's made of cotton candy or something because it's dream world,
right? Like, and then you run into like your grandpa, but he turns into your boss.
Yeah,
you're in your gym class for some reason the whole time. But either way, but like where something like hey, they've done something where our guns are cotton candy. Like it wouldn't have to be literal cotton candy. I'm saying something where we're in a dreamscape where guns don't do anything. So now, like the rotating hallway thing where you're having to fight somebody in zero gravity or whatever, there's just so many places you can go with it. And other movies do it. We could name examples all day where they've like it. In kung fu movies, if they've got guns, there'll be some point where they run out of bullets and they got to toss them aside, and now we're gonna fight, and that's fine. The audience is not like, well, wouldn't you just go try to find more bullets for your gun? Wouldn't that be better? It's like, no, we want to see them fight. It's fine. But anything but just shooting at each other. And I don't. This is not an anti-gun thing. Obviously, I like lots of movies with guns in them, but it's about trying to be imaginative with your action scenes, because in a movie like this, your action scenes are your drama. That's how you're forwarding plot and characters through the action. So if the action is just guys shooting and you're just fighting a bunch of bad guys with they're the SWAT team bad guys you see in a million action movies. They've got their faces covered or whatever. I said, I don't know. And then the final boss is, at one point, I forgot you mentioned the axe. Dudley Dursley like picks up her axe and he's like holding it, like waiting for them to come up there, and it's almost framed like, oh my gosh, he's got her axe. It's like, what's he gonna do with that? Even if he had 5 years to practice with it, he wouldn't be able to do anything against her. She's been using that since 4,000 years before Christ.
He's never swung an axe, and if you've ever swung an axe, it's not easy.
It's not intuitive.
Yeah. it'll hurt your arm, like your muscles. Like you don't use those muscles often. He certainly doesn't. I would have loved to see him try to swing that axe.
Yeah. Again, if the three of us were menaced by Dudley Dursley with an axe, we would feel nothing other than this is going to be a funny story to tell later. Like we would not. It's like, man, if I wind up dying here, that's my own fault. That's something that's on me. That's not on Dudley. I don't even feel like he should be charged with a crime for killing me with that battle axe, because that's
right.
I really killed myself.
In fact, make him president.
Yeah. Does Netflix have some sort of contract with him? Because he's also in Buster Scruggs.
Buster Scruggs, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think he just popped up in both these movies.
Yeah.
Cast as the villain here, I guess, because they figured we would remember him as the villain but he was not the big bad in Harry Potter. He was just a petulant child. He was
and he barely looks like he did in Harry Potter too, so it's like
it took me about an hour and a half into the movie, I was like, it's Dudley. Like it took me a while to figure out where I knew him from.
Looking forward, so this movie ends on a post-credit scene or mid-credit scene, wherever they insert it, to tease that the lady who was thrown into the ocean has gotten out.
Yes.
And also seems fine.
She seems totally fine for having drowned over and over and over again.
She's probably going to be
utterly
several
insane.
hundred years.
Has gone utterly mad.
She's going to be using the lingo of the times. She seems like she's been around forever.
So clearly teasing another movie. I thought when I saw the trailers for this, so much of it looks like TV. I assumed this was a series. This was a Netflix production from very early on. I think they funded this. This is not one of those things where, like the Cloverfield movies, where they just picked up something that had been made and they just distributed it. They were in on this from the start. I don't know what future plans are for the franchise, if they had like automatically approved a second movie or if they wanted to make it into I can't see Charlize Theron committing to a series. But if they do another one, I would hope that they do the stuff we're talking about. And in fact, fans of the graphic novel are probably going to be in your comments or in the Discord saying, well, in book 5, they do all of that stuff you guys are talking about. It doesn't happen, in the origin story.
Right. And it should have.
Apparently, Charlize Theron is interested in doing another one.
Yeah. I think she's been like, she feels like she wants a superhero thing. Like she did Aeon Flux, and like that movie was garbage, but I have to give her a lot of credit for doing Aeon Flux. That's a big swing.
It is weird that she has not been in a Marvel movie.
Yeah. And she's great. So obviously Mad Max,
Fury Road, but I think when they talked about making the Furiosa spinoff, they immediately said they were going to somebody younger.
Right, which is enraging because it's like we didn't the character of Furiosa, like it's a great character, but it's mostly because it's her, right? Like she's the actress making that character work.
Yeah.
So they're like, all right, time to recast her, and it's like, you're missing the point. It's a bummer. And again, if this, they're talking about there might be a Bird Box sequel. I'm more angry about that because I thought that idea was very like mediocre. And Netflix seems to do this. They make like movies that are okay, that then they say these did amazing and we're going to make more.
Well, the thing is Netflix self-reports.
Yeah. Also,
they notoriously do not give anybody their numbers.
Even if they're right, even if they're telling the truth, I get it because they're like, here's a movie. You don't have to do anything to watch it. You just have to have Netflix like everybody else. So it's like, of course their movies get watched.
Right. Like it's you drop this in the middle of the summer, in the middle of a pandemic where no new movies you can't go to the theater to see new movies. And like, hey, do you want to see Charlize Theron kill people with an axe? Why, yes, I do. Well, here you go.
And then you come at it and you're like, well, I didn't really feel like I paid money for it.
Yeah.
If I had paid money to see Bird Box, I would have been
Bird Box is trash.
I felt betrayed. Yeah, I wanted my time back.
Movie.
But like, I get it, because I think people listening to this who like this movie are like, so what? You know, like we're the ones putting all this effort into explaining why this movie, but it really just, I don't know, it just didn't resonate with me. And if it did with other people, then great. But like, because again, it's not hurting anybody. But
no, and you know, it's like you said, it's well directed. The action is cool. Like when they're actually doing the fighting and choreography and stuff, and it's not just shootouts in a hallway. It's cool.
Yeah, it just feels like a waste of money sometimes, where it's like you're spending all this money on all these people on a property, like a premise that's probably, you know, it's a good premise. You can do stuff with it. Just have a little more fun with it.
Yeah, because it's almost like they're afraid the audience would be too, like, if you get too weird with it, that we're going to be confused or whatever. And it's like, not really. Right. It's, you know, you watch like Doctor Strange, you watch any of these, like, these are mainstream movies. I mean, the Star Wars universe is weird as hell. And people didn't have to be eased into it. It's you know, it's
Satan is in the Mos Eisley Cantina.
Yeah,
he's just sitting there.
And he's just there, and it's like, yeah, it's fine. It's
yeah, we don't care.
So anyway, yeah, these people deserve a better movie. Maybe if they make a second one with a bigger budget, maybe it'll be better. You have a little bit more freedom to play with the ideas. You know.
I know Netflix this was in the news this past week. Netflix I don't necessarily know if it's the biggest budget they've spent, because I think some of their movies went over budget, but it's the biggest budget they've ever approved for that Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans movie.
Oh, yeah.
What's it about? What's it?
Ryan Gosling is like an ex-CIA agent or something on the run, and Chris Evans has to hunt him down. So I think Chris Evans is the bad guy, because Ryan Gosling plays it. It's like based on a book series, I think, and Ryan Gosling plays the main character.
I know they did a TV version of this. Why isn't that just The Fugitive with Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans? Like, just make The Fugitive.
Well, why
they'd have
does
to
that
give
need
them too much money?
Why does that need a huge
also,
budget? Like, is it clear
I guess it's like a global action movie.
Okay.
Like it's coming from the Russo brothers, and they're fresh off of Extraction.
Yeah, which that does not look like a TV show. I mean, that looked like it looked like a movie.
Yeah.
It's the sets and locations, everything looked, you know.
It had the yellow filter problem where, this takes place in like somewhere in the Middle East. Let's make everything yellow.
Give it the yellow filter so you know it's garbage.
Yeah. The people here do not matter.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot of bystanders get exploded.
Wow. That had a lower budget. $65 million for Extraction. Had a lower budget than the old guard.
Oh, man. It's you hold the action scenes side by side. That's rough. Again, unfair. The Russo brothers do this better than anybody. The director of this movie has directed TV prior to this, so it looks like there was one movie, but otherwise it's a TV director, been in the game for a long time. Hope she and everyone else involved in this get more work and get stuff that,
she's been attached to I got to look that up. I know she's been attached to a really big project, so
that's good.
Yeah,
because I don't know, it's always hard identifying, this sort of stuff, but like it really to me came down to like the story. I didn't think the story was very good. I thought it was well made. They had good people in it, but I couldn't care.
That's fair.
Yeah.
By the way, as we've been talking, we got off on Inception, which I could do an entire episode about that. But there's that scene from the trailer even where they arrive in a dream and they're shooting, I think Leo DiCaprio or somebody shooting back and forth at a guy, and then I think Tom Hardy walks up and says, "You just need to dream bigger." And so he pulls up a larger gun.
Grenade launcher.
Yeah.
And it blows the guy up, because it's like, that's the limit of your dream. Like, I was expecting in that moment, not really expecting, but like, you just need to dream bigger. Then like Godzilla comes out and eats the bad guy. Yeah. Like, this is a dream. We can do anything.
Yeah, Godzilla out there. Yeah, what are you doing?
Godzilla just joins the team. It's like that's such a great encapsulation of how when they sit down to make these movies, it's like, well, yeah, but what if he pulls up like a really big gun? It's like, no, how about it's not a gun at all?
What if it was an even bigger gun? Yeah. What if he, I don't know, has a catapult that shoots sharks at people?
Or something.
It's a
You've
dream,
got the budget
man.
for it. No one's, you can. Anyway. So that's the old guard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final thoughts? Any?
The director is about to direct Viola Davis in The Woman King, which is a historical epic. Like she was attached to that this week.
That sounds.
And it's going to be a very big movie. Yeah.
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 But yeah, no other thoughts other than watch this movie, I guess. Like it's the action
free.
scenes
If you're paying for Netflix, there's no reason not to. It's
There's no reason not to, yeah.
Literally anything on the service. What have you lost?
Yeah, it's 2 hours long.
If you
it's
don't
boring
have
in parts, but
yeah, I know people who have very short attention spans. If I wouldn't recommend it to
I was on my phone a lot while I was watching this.
Yeah, like it's not.
There are
I don't
long
know,
stretches where it's just people sitting in a room talking about shit.
Yeah,
but it's not. They're not sitting in the room exploring the idea of immortality. They're just talking about plot stuff.
Yeah, they're delivering really sweaty exposition in those scenes.
Just now occurred to me. I'm sorry that at the end of the episodes we're trying to wrap up things. Just now, it's the same thing where you like think of the perfect insult like the next day after the argument.
Mm-hmm.
right.
The things always occur to me much too late for the conversation. But when one of the first, like when Charlize Theron abducts Niall into their group, which occurs to me, she abducted her the same as the CEO guy was trying to abduct them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just snatches her as like, okay, you're part of our superhero team now, even though you have no personal motivation or you're not trying to get revenge on anybody or accomplish anything. You have no internal motivation of your own. You've been abducted. You've been abducted into the movie. I'm sorry.
Right. And you can't see your family anymore.
But because at least in Men in Black, like he made a choice and he was trying to pursue, he's trying to solve a case, and then anyways, she takes her on this rattly cargo jet, and then Niall says, well, is this safe? Is this plane safe? And then Charlize Theron, in what should be a really cool moment, a trailer moment, says, like, what difference does it make? Because we can't die. It just now occurs to me, a plane crashing and then you're being burned alive by jet fuel because you're trapped in the fuselage for the next however long it takes for the 20,000 gallons of jet fuel to burn off, to just be burned alive for like a week, that would actually be one of the things you would be very afraid of.
Yeah.
I would think. Like if you were on an airliner, you would be more afraid of that thing crashing than the other people on there. Because if this crashes into the ocean, you're just dead. I'm trapped at the bottom of the ocean in the fuselage of a plane, and I maybe can't get out because I don't have superhuman strength, apparently. I just have experience, and I don't have any experience with escaping from. So I'm drowning, and every time I try to do something, I only have a few minutes until I drown again. Like, that would actually be worse.
Best case scenario is you're at the surface and you have to swim back to land.
Yeah, the 2,000 miles back to back to New York.
Right, again, you don't have super strength, so you'd probably drown a few times.
Well, you're going to keep drowning
You
because you're
just
going to get
have to
exhausted.
drown your way until you found the currents to get to wash up on shore.
Yeah, so your corpse, yeah.
We see they need to eat because she buys a bunch of protein bars. So, like...
But you can have that scene and it wouldn't cost you a dime where they lose a character over the ocean and they turn up like a month later. And it's like, I had to drift, just drowning over and over again until a cargo ship thought I was a corpse and I got tangled in their propeller.
Right.
But anyway, I'm here now.
I got caught in a crab net.
I got hauled into a crab vessel, and boy, were they surprised. I had to kill all those people because now they were all witnesses. Like, it could just be a story you tell. Yeah. You don't have to show it. That would be a fun conversation. Just throw it in there.
I killed them all with crabs. It was amazing.
Or you see these people having a dinner and they're like drinking wine, and it's like, okay, so can they get drunk like normal people? Do they have super healing drunken powers?
In some Wolverine comics, they actually address that, like he can't get drunk.
Okay, so but we see him drink in the movies, but here it's like, man, if you knew that like you couldn't overdose from heroin, and heroin apparently not, if there's kids listening, don't listen to what I'm about to say, but heroin feels really good apparently. Apparently that's really great. So
if they were all just addicted to heroin,
who cares? Why would you even call it an addiction?
Oh, right. There's that scene in the first Captain America movie after Bucky supposedly dies, and he's sitting there drinking, and he's like, "I've been doing this for hours, and I can't get drunk."
Okay. Yeah. Well, in this movie, yeah, they apparently can. So like they're drinking wine instead of just maybe they just like the taste, but. Hell, why not start experimenting and say, oh, okay, let's see what will get me high. Let's see how much crack I have to smoke before I can feel something, because why not? Again, you're so bored.
I want a scene where they're just doing heroin. He's like, I've been doing this for hours. I just keep ODing and coming right back.
Hey, you know what would make those gunshots hurt less? Whole bunch of heroin. Or a bunch of morphine. Like, hey, before we go into battle, we're going to load our guns, but there's something else I've got to do also.
Listen, I've been chasing the dragon for 6,000 years.
Yeah, Niall, I don't know if you've ever done this before, but here's what you do. You combine heroin because it's a numbing agent. It's actually the best painkiller on earth, but it's going to make you sleepy. So to stay awake, you've got to snort coke. But because of the way like your blood vessels handle it, you have to snort a lot of coke.
Right. And like you're gonna die, but then when you come back to, you're gonna feel great.
Yeah,
you're gonna be
your heart will stop. It's fine. It's not major damage. You only be up for like 5 minutes, but yeah, then you'll feel like a new person.
Yeah. I wake up like this every morning. Yeah. That's how I start the day.
I inject myself with 5 times the amount that killed John Belushi.
And here's the thing. It's on Netflix. Who's going to complain? It doesn't have to be in theaters, and if people get mad, that's just free publicity.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway.
Something. Do something.
I'd be shooting myself out of a cannon.
That's how I'd travel. Just have cannons at all the places I want to go to.
Yeah, because
collide with the side of the building like a fucking projectile.
I wanted to see someone casually walk out of the skyscraper by just jumping out, like not to kill anybody. Just like, oh, I got to get down there, and you just fall, splatter on the ground, get back up.
Or that we have to do whatever we did in 1835 Prussia. The punchline to that, for what the hint of like what could have happened in 1835 that caused you to have to do this, where you're like all of you are nude and you've set yourself on fire and you just go charging into the room,
just hugging people,
and they're just all terrified, like the gunman is like, what? And it's like, yeah, that time we had to convince them we were witches. Let's do that. It works just as well now.
Let's do what we did in 1835 Prussia. Okay, so we're going to need 16 horses.
You're going to be catapulted into the building from 6 blocks away. I'm going to sever your head and I'm going to carry it, and I'm going to throw it in there, and you're going to yell back to us their position.
Yeah, can they like sneak into places by just like throwing their severed head in somewhere and then growing the body?
Would not be that difficult of a heal as long as you've got the rest of their body. You just got to hold the head onto it, and it would reattach. It wouldn't be. Yeah. It wouldn't be like having to grow a whole new body. At least I wouldn't think so. Have fun with it. Throw an arm in there, like it's.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, throw an arm with a gun in it and just have the gun shoot everybody. I don't know.
Could have an entire other episode of just writing the craziest version of this movie. But you could even saying like, no, but we've got to keep it under $70 million. I am confident. I'm sorry. I've seen some horror movies that were shot for $5 million. I'm confident you can pull some of this stuff off on a budget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man. I think we should wrap it up.
Yes.
So
fair enough. How long have I made this episode?
An hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
Not your personal record, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
But longer, is it longer than the movie? How long is this movie?
2 hours
2
and
hours.
5
No,
minutes.
so we kept it under the length of the movie, and that's really all that I asked for. Because you can go on YouTube right now and find literal 5-hour-long videos complaining about The Last Jedi.
Yes.
We're just breaking down frame by frame everything that the feminists did to that movie. So this is we were pretty brisk by that standard.
We're moderates.
We're real progressive. Yeah.
Jason, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah.
Oh, is this where I plug my book?
This
It
is
is,
where
yes.
you plug
Now
your
you plug
book.
your books.
Yeah.
The book that's coming out is called Zoe Punches the Future in the Dick. It is a science fiction novel, and the great thing about somebody who criticizes pop culture for a living than writing pop culture is you can read it and then find where I made the same mistakes I just criticized, and then you can go on Twitter and tell me about it.
Yep.
So yes, that's coming. That is the second book in a series. First one is called Futuristic Violence in Fancy Suits. It's usually, you can find it at garage sales for like a nickel, or it's usually on Kindle for some reduced price. But you don't have to have read that one to have read this to read the second one. It's like a Sherlock Holmes situation where it's just
interesting.
It's the same people, but they've got a new set of circumstances, and you can pretty much just jump in anytime you want.
But you should. You should start from the start.
I appreciate it if you buy all of the books, including the John Dies at the End series. There's 3 of those, but I again, if money is tight, if a friend has copies, just borrow them. It's fine. It's
I think Futuristic Violence did what Ready Player One was trying to do in some respects, but Ready Player One was way shittier about it.
Yeah, Spielberg, get on this.
Yeah, get on this shit. Just in terms of what tech billionaires in the near future would be obsessed with and what their houses would look like and shit.
Oh yeah.
Tell them about our things, Dave.
Sure. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. There's exclusive podcasts there, like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman and Fox Mulder is a Maniac. We have all sorts of tiers. There's tiers where you can make us watch movies. Pretty much any movie.
Yeah.
We'll have to watch it.
As long as it's accessible in some way.
Yeah, as long as we're able to watch it.
Yeah.
And it's not like, I don't know, just a video of you doing something.
If it's not just like a 5-hour video of you shitting on The Last Jedi, then we'll probably do it. We also have a store, tpublic.com/stores/gamefullyunemployed, where you get t-shirts, stickers, mugs, all kinds of things. Check it out or not. Again, if money's tight, it's fine. I don't care what you do with your life. You live, you be you. I don't know.
You be you.
I don't know what's going on.
If you're immortal, do all the things we said.
Oh yeah,
because you're immortal.
If you're indestructible, buy all of these things. What are you doing?
Yeah,
that's how you save humanity.
Right.
What were these characters doing for money? Was that established? Were they taking money to do these jobs, like to go and rescue the children, or was that just something they did? I guess
it's unclear. Like when she goes to the store to buy like the first aid stuff, I was legitimately curious about how she was going to pay, and then you just skip over the scene where she pays for it.
You'd think they'd know how to. It'd be weird to be immortal and broke.
You'd have to keep track of what currency was like current, right? Like that'd be a whole thing. Ah, man, I don't want to reignite this conversation.
I'm sorry. No,
unless they're addicted to heroin, they're just spending all their money on heroin.
Yeah. Listen, they get paid in heroin
and selling the heroin that they. Yeah. Guys, we've been around for thousands of years. The best way to make money.
We'll save these kids for 16 bricks of heroin.